Okay. Welcome everybody. My name is Julia Moore. I'm with the Indy Arts Council. And this presentation this evening is something that's very near and dear to my heart, which is crime prevention through public art. This evening, we are going to be hearing from Shane Foley of the IMPD North District, where everybody wave to everybody, Shane. Daniel Stephenson, who is the DPW administrator, and myself. Before we go ahead, I'm going to, there we go. That's what I was supposed to be on. Before we go ahead and talk about the agenda, I just want to get some ground rules straight. First of all, please everybody mute your Zoom connection, mute yourself. You can have your video on or not. That's up to you. But I also suggest that rather than seeing everybody that's in this meeting, that you adjust your screen so that you're only seeing the active speaker. And so you do that by going up to the corner where you see all of the grids of everybody and clicking on the one that looks like a single rectangle. And if you mouse over it, it says show small active speaker video. And that will make sure that you see who's speaking and that you don't get distracted by other people, including yourself. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start just to give you an outline of what the discussion is today. We're gonna start out with Captain Foley talking about what is CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. And then I'm going to move into a discussion about what CPTED has to do with public art and what public art has to do with CPTED and how public art can be preventative of crime. Then we're going to go in, I'm going to talk about the City of Indianapolis's traffic signal box art program, which is a really good way to start putting this principle into action. And then we'll hear from Lisa Huse, who is with the BRVA, and she'll tell you about some recent projects with traffic signal boxes that the BRVA did. Then we're going to talk to Daniel Stephenson from DPW about two programs that the City of Indianapolis has where you can legally do this on city property. Then we'll talk about some ways that you can get your project funded. And then we'll have some final questions and thoughts. So at any point, if you have a question, you can either raise your virtual hand or you can put it in the chat. And then when we have a break, we'll go through and we'll go to the chat, or you can just write it down somewhere and then save it to the end. Let's go ahead and go to Captain Foley.
Thank you, Julia. First, I want to start off by thanking the Indy Arts Council and DPW for partnering with us on doing this. This is, as Julia said, this is near and dear to her heart. Crime prevention is near and dear to my heart. And as a CPTED practitioner, utilizing public art to prevent crime was a really unique concept to me. It's something I didn't consider, something I didn't know about. Also, with the traffic signal box is also near and dear to my heart. When I used to work East District, I worked with the Irvington groups to get traffic signal boxes painted on East Washington Street. So a little background on what is crime prevention through environmental design is kind of providing some background as to why this matters. As a general concept, it's the opportunity to use the environment to reduce the potential, reduce the likelihood, the idea that criminal activity will occur. So typically we think of lighting and not just having a lot of light, but proper lighting, and landscaping and not just having a lot of landscaping, but the proper landscaping. That could be fences, it could be signage, it could be the actual, how the building is oriented to the street or to the outdoor space, where the windows are placed. But also another part of that is the use of public art to give a sense of community, in a sense that people are watching and that people care about this neighborhood. A lot of people may have heard of broken windows theory. And that is oftentimes what we think of when we think of Septet and how this plays into it using public art to give people a sense that this community cares about this community. And when you enter this area, you have entered a space where people care about this space. So don't commit crimes here because people are watching and people care about this particular environment. And that's what public art can do. I mean, there's other ways that public art can contribute to crime prevention, but in its simplest form, that's one of the greatest things. You see on the image here, if you can go back one to, if you can see on this image here, there is a person with a dog walking. That was important to us that there was a sense of livelihood and activity in this art to give people the sense that there is activity in this neighborhood, that you may be walking around and see a person with a dog. And that if you're thinking about engaging in criminal activity, that somebody who's walking around with their dog may see you. Thank you, Julia. So, as I mentioned, some of the very basic principles: central access, meaning a one primary point of entry to a property, is a Septet principle. Surveillance and lighting, and then territorial reinforcement. And that's really where this comes in. When we define the territory, that this is an area or a space that a community cares about, and that you've entered this neighborhood, you know when you've entered, and when you leave, you may know when you've left, because the design changes, the art changes, the sense of community may change. Also, it helps with the graffiti. Believe it or not, as ironic as it is, people who do graffiti will generally not do it on another form of art. It's almost like a sense of respect for other artists, that they don't damage someone else's work. So public art can reduce the potential for graffiti if you do it on or on a traffic signal box or on a wall where there's murals, things of that nature. Here's a couple examples of the use of art. This is in Irvington. You have the before on the left and the after on the right, and you just see it changes the concept of, this is a lively, this is not abandoned property. It's a place that people care about. Whether or not it's vacant or not, you wouldn't know that, but it gives the sense that this property is one that people care about.
Okay, so I'm going to tag on to Shane's introductory remarks. And you heard Shane talk about the broken windows theory. And that is the theory that if someone sees broken windows, it leads you to break more windows, or, nobody cares about this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to break something, or I'm going to act up. More and more, that's being replaced with something called the busy streets theory, which is when you see people out and about, you want to be out and about. And when people see people interacting with their neighborhood and having fun and going to stores or talking on a street corner, that's the idea that, you know what, I better not do anything because I may be watched. And public art really contributes to this busy streets theory. It attracts people, and the more people you have in an area, the less crime you have in an area. That is a basic Septet principle. Public art tends to activate places. It makes places feel lively, which makes them feel vibrant, and it makes them feel safe. If there's stuff going on, you want to be there, and it makes you feel safe, and it makes people who want to act up in that area maybe feel a little differently, that they may not want to do that. Public art, and this is my favorite thing about public art creates community identity. So when you're going into a neighborhood, you know who lives there, you know what they value, you know what they're about, and you know that they are like you. And it makes people in the community and outside of the community feel seen and appreciated. And I highlighted that because the next thing I'm going to talk about is why that matters. Public art also creates that sense of ownership that Shane was talking about, which signals that places are cared for and watched over. If you care enough about your community to put public art in it, then you also care enough about it not to have crime in it. And then finally, public art helps wayfinding. So if you know that there's a public, and I can tell you this because I am terrible at directions. People know people know that I can't listen to directions. I go by landmarks. I'm totally visual when I drive around and when I'm trying to go somewhere. And for me, public art helps me because I know, oh, I'm going to turn left at this, or I'm going to go 2 blocks past this mural that I like. Public art helps that wayfinding, and it makes places less confusing. And if you're going to a place and you're less confused, you're not going to wander around and make yourself a target. So if you know where you're going, public art helps you find where you're going. It keeps you focused and it keeps you alert. So as promised, I'm going to talk about why feeling seen is really, really important, especially when it comes to public art. So research by the Urban Institute, which is a research facility. I love their papers. If you wanted to head over to their website, they have so many papers and so much research on so many topics. But one of their research items says that if you feel that you belong to a place, in which case, and you feel that that place feels like you, that is tied to your overall well-being, positive academic outcomes, positive health outcomes. I mean, you think, wow, what does it care? You know, what do I care if someone cares about me or sees me? You would be surprised. Just feeling that this place is for you is amazing for all kinds of positive social outcomes. And also there's been a lot of research done about the concept of dignity. And the concept of dignity means that you have the right to be respected and valued. And there's 3 dimensions of that. So through the work that you do, through stories that are told about you, and through being included in the world through which you move. And the importance of being seen is so, so important to that concept of dignity, and public art contributes to that. So when you feel valued, when you feel connected to others, when you feel that your community cares about you, then you're also a lot more likely to become invested in that community and to use, and I'll introduce this concept in the next slide, to use your own social capital to invest in the success of yourself and those around you and your entire community. And that is so, so powerful as a protectant against criminality, so much. And it says, you know, it feels very squishy, but they've done all kinds of studies about this. Okay, so from purely a design standpoint, which designs best discourage crime? And these are things, they've done very limited studies, but the studies that they've done have been really positive about this. So if you have designs that have faces in it, a face, just like the guy walking the dog that Shane was talking about, if you see public art that has a face in it, that is a subconscious signal that you are being watched, that there's someone around. Even though the only someone is a painted someone, you feel that there's people around you. Bright colors, busy designs, that conveys the sense of energy and optimism, which is very powerfully protectant against crime. This is something that the research is not exactly clear on, but it is strongly indicative that there's a certain shade of pink, and I'm giving you that shade right now, that is a specific shade of pink that helps reduce aggression, but only until you get used to seeing it, and then it doesn't work anymore. And so if you've ever wondered why in locker rooms they paint the visiting team's locker room pink, that's why. It's this shade of pink. Another thing that helps discourage crime is culturally specific imagery that comes from your culture, that you recognize, that you feel comfortable with. And then it goes back to that feeling seen and feeling acknowledged. There's some other kinds of public art. This is more kind of sculpture than painted things, but if it's an artwork that blocks an easy escape pathway, it helps you slow down if you can't see that you can commit a crime and then get away quickly. So something that makes you slow down, think about your environment and how you're going to navigate it, that discourages crime. There's all kinds of public art that incorporates lighting. And you heard a little bit about the right kind of lighting. This is one of the right kind of lighting, that the public art can be a certain kind of artistic lighting and provide more just overall illumination. And then the final thing is the idea of uplifting messages or themes. And this is very psychology. If you see something that makes you feel happy and upbeat and positive, then that is going to affect how you approach the world. So the image that I gave here is, it hits a number of these. It doesn't hit the pink color, but it has culturally specific imagery from the Maori culture. It has text, which is a Maori proverb, and it has some imagery of these sunflowers, which are native to the area. All of this, so this is in Australia, in an area where there are a lot of Maori people in a Maori neighborhood. And so this is something that the community has decided that this is what they want, and it does help enliven that neighborhood and tells everybody and telegraphs who lives here and what they value. So public art is not just the result, it is a process. And that's why I love public art, because I get totally involved in process. So the idea of engaging your community to decide and jointly plan what the public art is going to be has a lot of benefits as well. So if you participate in something, you own it. And I don't know how many of you have had that feeling, but when you can point to something and say, I did that, I was part of that, I remember how this happened. And that participation is ownership. And if you had a hand in building it, then you care about it and you want to protect it. And you want to make sure that nobody else messes with it, because it's like they're messing with you. The other thing that is really wonderful about the engaging the public and working with the public in public art is that when you connect with other people for a purpose, you all get the sense that we matter. This can't be done by one person alone. It has to be done by all of us, and we all have to agree. And we're all a team in this, and not a team in like the team building sense, but literally we all have a hand in this, and we all have a part to play in this. We matter. And if any one of us steps out, then the project is weaker. Another thing, that a principle that I always practice when I work with public art is I don't like to do things to people or do things for people. I like to do things with people. So I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing is, first of all, consented to. They invite me to help them, rather than to say, oh, I want you to do this for me. No, it is a with situation, because no one wants the feeling of, oh, someone's doing this for me because I can't do it for myself, or someone's doing this to me and I don't want them to do it. That idea of doing things with people is very, very powerful. Kind of a little bit, I've kind of alluded to this, but if you are sharing the responsibility for making something happen, then you all share in the outcome. And then you have a shared sense of making sure that what you've done stays respected. Ideally, the public art that results from this process, it reflects the community values, because everyone decided on it and everyone figured it out together. And so it's a shared sense of value and a shared sense of identity. And again, when you're in a community and you know that everybody in the community is pulling together, you don't want anyone to mess that up. And ultimately, the goal of all of public art is to make you feel like this place is for me, this is mine. And all of these things that you do in order to make a project like this happen, these are all elements of what's called social capital. Social capital is how you have shared yourself into building something that is bigger than yourself. There's a lot of research being done on social capital, which means that there is a positive relationship between the amount of social capital and the amount of education people tend to pursue, children are better off, crime rates are lower, higher rates of health, better tolerance for each other, higher rates of happiness, and much more economic and civic equality. So that's pretty powerful. And public art gives you all of those things, which is, again, why I love it and why I do what I do. So who's the Arts Council? That's where I work. We are the leading arts advocacy and service agency for Central Indiana. And Central Indiana is Marion and surrounding counties. So we serve artists, we serve arts organizations, and we serve the community. And one of the primary ways we serve the community is through our public art programs. And we connect everybody together. We connect artists and audiences and businesses and organizations, everybody to the art. And you can find us at indyarts.org. But I'm going to talk to you about the traffic signal box program tonight. So this is something that we established in 2015. I came to the Arts Council in 2014. And so this was one of my very first projects that I did. And this was a collaboration with the city of Indianapolis, with DPW and BNS. And this really, Shane was one of the very first people I met, because he came to me and said, let's do traffic signal boxes. This is already happening. How can we make this be an official program of the city? And I said, I think I can help with that. So we developed program guidelines. We developed, okay, what does this, what does the permitting process look like? Because all of these boxes are owned by the city. So it is city property. So what does the permitting process look like? What kinds of designs are we going to allow and not allow? How are people going to pay for this? We work through all of this program. And we have program guide and forms. You can email me and then I'll send them to you. But we also have them online. We just changed our website and I'm not exactly sure where they are right now, but we will get them on there. So there is a program guide. There are some application forms. They're very simple. And what we do is we assist you, the community, with finding artists. And then we coordinate permitting with the city. So you don't go through BNS for this particular permit for the traffic signal box art program, but you do work with me. And so the process takes about 6 months from usually the time that you think that you want to do this until the time that you've actually got finished boxes. So set an initial meeting with me. We'll talk about what you want to do, how many boxes you want to do, where they are. I have a suggested process that you go through as far as discussions that you want to have with your community and with your committee that's managing this project. There's an application form. Like I said, it's very simple, and that's mostly so I can track who's involved and what your timeline is. And then there is a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Public Works. So you get to see that. You don't sign that until actually your design is approved. But you go through a process of finding artists and getting the designs, and that can take a long time. And I can tell you more about that later, but we'll just shortcut it for now. And so once the designs are approved, you can sign the DPW will sign that memorandum of understanding with you, and then you can go ahead, prime your boxes and apply your artwork. Take pictures, send it to me. I put it on the public art directory, and then it's up to you, the community, to maintain it for 3 to 5 years. And after 3 to 5 years, it's going to start to look a little gnarly. So then just remove it by painting over it, or you can replace it with new artwork. Okay, so I do these all the time. I probably have about 5 different neighborhoods going at any one time that are doing projects. I'm in the middle of projects with the Southdale Neighborhood Association right now on the south side. BRVA, you're going to hear from in a second, and I'm working right now with the Hillside neighborhood. So we're all over town. We're getting these done. We're finding artists. We're paying them. We're just making sure that these projects happen and that they are fully permitted with the city. And this box that I'm showing you right now is by Christina Hollering, and this is one of the boxes that was just done down in Southdale. Okay. Lisa, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Yay, let's hear from you.
Great. So, hi, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm a volunteer with the Broad Ripple Village Association. About 4 years ago, I got involved in helping with the beautification committee. And over the last couple of years, I've been a party of executing 3 different traffic boxes. The reason why Broad Ripple Village Association is passionate about extending and getting more and more of our traffic boxes covered in art, of course, is beautification. Connecting with the artists. Many of our artists have a connection to the village. They either live there, they have lived there, they've had businesses there. So it's great to get our local artists involved. And of course, the vandalism component and curbing tagging is a motivation, although we stay very quiet about that because while people commend the art, celebrate the art, and love the art, there is a group of people who believe that the traffic boxes are a public canvas and should be left alone for that purpose. So we're very quiet about that, and we really focus on the celebration of the art. Julie has talked about the process. I'll say that to me, I have a love-hate relationship with this process. I love the output. I don't love the process. And I'll tell you why. I mean, the great part of it is working with the artists is fantastic. They are passionate, they're responsive, they pour their heart and soul into it. Part of the challenge is, while Julie mentions that the application itself is not that strenuous, there's a lot of background paperwork that has to go into supporting all the signatures and approvals. And one of the biggest barriers is that the adjacent building owners, not the tenants, but the owners have to approve the art itself. And one of the big issues that I found in the 3 that I've worked on is about 50% of the building owners, number one, are not based here in the state of Indiana. Or they have no recognition of, even the surrounding area of their property. So to get them to sign something, people are apprehensive to sign a document that they feel is going to hold them legally responsible. So that signature process can be pretty arduous and cause a lot of delays tracking down the right person and getting them to sign. And then there are, delays with the city approval. So it just, when Julia mentioned that 6 months, you really do need that 6 months. And I found that it's not the artists themselves, and it's not community acceptance of it. It really is getting all the background paperwork and approvals that you need. Some tips that we found to move that along: we have operationalized all of our forms and our contracts and letters, and we've started to use DocuSign. So we found that there's just some mechanisms to get those signatures and approvals working faster. I would encourage you, to use whatever strings you can pull to get the building owners to engage and sign, and that will move you along further and faster. Go to the next slide. When we look at, kind of retrospectively, the past boxes that we've done, what you could expect, I find that I probably have to put about 30 to 40 man hours from start to finish. And that's from engaging an artist, helping them review the contract, finding the property owners, getting the property owner approvals, putting the documentation together. It does take a decent amount of time. So start now. If you're eager to get one done in the spring or summer of next year, get that going now. Please feel free to reach out to me. I've been through it a few times. I know some ways to, put documents together and fashion things in a way that it operationalizes. But what I will say is that it is the juice is worth the squeeze. It has its ups and downs and some pain points to it. But you're looking at this traffic box you see here. This was done a couple weeks ago. It's right in front of the Fresh Time supermarket on College Avenue. And the artist who completed this, she had a number of people coming in and out of that business and apartment complex all day, commending her, thanking her, offering to bring her food and drink. She left and she said, "My heart is full." And so it really is worthwhile. And every time you go by and see Mother Earth on College Avenue, you really feel like you've accomplished something and done something for the good of the community. So I would encourage you to, fight through the process and rely on people like myself and Julia who can help you get there.
I'm sorry, I muted myself. Thank you, Lisa. Very, very good and a very upfront, personal view of the experience. So as a community, what do you need to do one of these projects? I would say that the program is designed for neighborhoods and communities to spearhead it. It's not really designed for artists to take the lead. Although artists, if you see some boxes that you want done, contact the neighborhood association and enlist their assistance and make sure that they understand why you want to do this. So you need to know where your box is, that box location, and what you're going to do is you're going to, I think I talk about that in the next step, but you're going to need to know where your boxes are. Get an application form, which I can send to you, and that helps us understand the nature of your project, who's involved, what your budget is, what your timeline is. You will need artwork designs, but the good thing is you don't need that up front. There's time for you to put those, to get those together. And we as the Arts Council, I can help you find artists. There's various ways to do that. We have an artist directory where you can kind of DIY it. Or if you want an artist to specifically come to you with an interest of doing that, we can put out an open call for you. You will need approval from the neighborhood association if it's not the neighborhood association that is starting this process. So artists, you will need an approval from the neighborhood association. And here's what Lisa was talking about. You need approval from the property owners that are on all four corners of where that box is. So the one next to the box, but also across the other streets. It's really hard to find them. As she mentioned, a lot of them are out of town. They don't care. And just a tip, you can get signatures a lot easier if you have a design to show them. Otherwise, they're going, I'm not going to sign until I see a design. So wait to get those until you have that artist design. When you have all of that stuff, the city is going to sign the memorandum of understanding, and then you just maintain the boxes for 3 to 5 years. And this right here, this is a single box, but it's two different sides of it. And it's a double box. It's like a box with another box kind of tacked onto it. This is really clever. Travis Neal did this. It's down in Southdale. And he just had this design where he incorporated that weird little situation. Incredibly creative. And this is what you can have in your neighborhood. So I usually like to have a little talk. I mean, with the Southdale project, I went down and I had a talk with all the artists so that everybody was on the same page about kind of how to design these boxes. So they can be hand painted or they can be vinyl wraps. The program guidelines have a vendor list, which I would feel very, very comfortable with any of those vendors doing a wrap on the box. You have to cover the entire box, even the top of the top. We're not talking about a square on the side. When we say wrap, it is a wrap, whether it's painted or vinyl. All of these boxes have vents and you kind of see them on the lower side. Leave them open. You can see how the top is done, but then there's like a little slit. This is, I believe, a wrap. So it's a vinyl wrap, but they cut and left a little slit open. That's how the electronics inside the box vent. So don't clog those up or else they're going to overheat. There's always a handle on all of these boxes. That's how they get in to service the electronics in the box. There's a lock on that handle. Do not paint that lock. Leave it open. Don't clog it with paint. This particular design just didn't even wrap that handle, just left it alone. That's fine too. You can paint the door hinge. Do it very lightly. If you're wrapping the box, make sure that you leave that door hinge uncovered, or else it's not going to open. The box isn't going to open and close right. And here's something else that I absolutely must stress. Do not paint the concrete base that these boxes sit on. And I will show you why in a second. All right, so as far as just the design guidelines, Try not to use large areas of flat color because that can attract tagging. This box has large areas of flat color that I'm surprised it hasn't been tagged, because if they're going to tag it, they're going to go right in that spot. Wrap the design around the box so that it's a continuous design, and don't treat each side as a separate image area. There's a lot of temptation, especially if you're working with kids. It's like, oh, you know, every box can accommodate 4 kids' work. Well, what you have is a box that looks like a mishmash, and it just does not help your neighborhood at all. Don't use any text. Text is distracting for drivers, but there should be an area around 1 square foot on the short side that's, or just any side that's away from the street, where there is a required notice, and your agreement will say what the notice is, or the program guidelines will say what the notice is, but it's a way to contact someone in case it's vandalized, so that you know that the box needs some maintenance. So it's a tiny little bit, it's about 1 square foot, just so that someone that's driving doesn't get distracted and try to read those tiny little letters. And really the main thing is, let's think of these as works of art. Don't think of them as a box, think of them as a canvas, which is why we call the program street corner canvases. And so I love, this is one of my favorite illustrations of a box, because the artist did 2 very cool things. They superimposed a photograph of what's behind the box onto the box, so that the box kind of disappears. But then there's this message, and yes, I know this has text on it. This is not a traffic signal box. It's not on a corner. It's someone sees it walking down the street. It's some other kind of utility box. I'll talk about that in a second. But just like it just turned these 2 sort of ugly pieces of infrastructure into a piece of conceptual art, which I always love. So here's just some thoughts from me. This design is, I like the design. It wraps the box around, it includes the top, it's very busy, which will discourage tagging, but they didn't do the whole box. There's this bottom part that they didn't do, and it just looks weird. These designs, too much flat color, it's going to attract a tagging, especially this white. That is so pretty, and someone is going to come in and they're going to ruin that. I love these designs. They are so busy, they are bright, they are cheerful, they are energetic, they put you in a happy mood. And the best thing about it, if someone tried to tag it, it's not going to be very satisfying. The tag will not be seen because these are just so busy. This design has text, so a reminder that you can't use text as part of the design on our boxes. And whoever did this chose this is not local to here. But whoever chose to do this turned the traffic signal box into a sign. We don't do that here. The box is supposed to be art, not signage. Okay. Let's check the chat. Let's take a break, Steve. Daniel, I'll come back to you in a second, but just to see if there's anything in the chat. Oh, Lisa put her email into the chat, and Jordan, yes, I love that flower truck box too. So awesome. All right, Tan, let's hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much again to the Indy Arts Council and Captain Foley with the IMPD North District for putting together this event and inviting us at the Department of Public Works to be a part of it. As Julia mentioned, my name is Daniel Stephenson. I'm an administrator with the Department of Public Works. I oversee our program that is called Community-Powered Infrastructure, which is a relatively new term for this program that we offer here in Indianapolis. Community-powered infrastructure actually is kind of like an umbrella term that incorporates our art in the right-of-way policy. our tactical urbanism policy, and then another program that we offered that we often call INIP, that is the Indianapolis Neighborhood Infrastructure Partnership Program. But tonight our focus is going to be on art in the right of way. So as Julia and Captain Foley have stated, so Art in the Right of Way is a program that allows communities to celebrate their unique identities by using art within the city right of way for placemaking and beautification within their neighborhoods. Whether it's a mural or a sculpture, this program offers a unique way to build community bonds. And it also allows our department the opportunity to work with communities in a fun way. Essentially, this program has been around since the beginning of 2022. It was really developed by our department because we had all of these wonderful ideas that would come through to us where people wanted to maybe paint a sidewalk or paint in the middle of an intersection to celebrate their community. And frankly, as a department, we kind of got tired of having to say no to everybody, right? And the many reasons why we were tired of having to say no to everybody is for all the wonderful reasons that Captain Foley and Julia have already shared, right? So art can be used for crime prevention in addition to placemaking and beautification. And one of the things that particularly ties back to our department is that it can actually help improve safety for all roadway users. So whether you're traveling by vehicle or bike or walking on the sidewalks or crossing the street at an intersection here within the city, art can actually help provide safety there. So the heart of the program, kind of walking through some of the cans and can'ts of the program on this same slide here. So an Art in the Right of Way project, it can be either permanent or temporary. That is going to be up to the community. We would love to see these Art in the Right of Way projects be kept on a permanent basis because of all of the safety measures that they can bring, as well as being fun to look at. But they can be used on a temporary basis as a means for a tactical urbanism project, which I don't want to get into the specifics of tactical urbanism too deeply on this. But tactical urbanism is really more a temporary project that tests a hypothesis for infrastructure change. So you can actually use art to mimic permanent infrastructure, like a curb bump out, to help the appearance of narrower streets, which can slow down traffic, and various things like that. They can be a mural, it can be abstract art, it can be a sculpture. They can be located anywhere within the right of way. So when you're thinking of what is the public right of way, that's going to be sidewalks, neighborhood intersections, streets. The one thing that they really can't do is they can't mimic MUTCD regulated traffic control markings. So MUTCD stands for the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. This is a guideline that's put out by the Federal Highway Association that all states must follow these guidelines. It helps keep infrastructure for traffic to be uniform and be the same. So what this really means is, and one of the things that I'm sure that we'll definitely get questions on is, unfortunately, the one thing that we really can't allow at this point in time is artistic crosswalks. That is something that I learned when I got to be a part of the NACTO conference this year, that MUTCD guidelines are considering changing in the near future. So if that does, I will be the first to try to get a neighborhood to do an artistic crosswalk, because I think that they can just be so fun, and a way to, help provide safe crossings for people in a way that also celebrates your neighborhood. And then last on this slide, and this is similar to what Julia was talking about with the traffic box program, we would say words should be limited for an art in the right-of-way project. We don't, want them to become advertising or super distracting for the people that are driving. So kind of limiting words is the best option, but we have had some examples like with the Martin Luther King Junior Center, where they did a 120 is enough campaign at a dangerous intersection, where we allowed them to paint 120 is enough on all four sides of an intersection, but best to limit word usage in these. So then with the Art in the Right-of-Way program, to be considered, what should a community do? So the first thing, and I believe Julia talked about this earlier also, is that you're really going to want to gather community input to develop an idea collaboratively. That way, you're working with the people in the community, not being kind of prescriptive with an artwork that goes in. We want to see, maybe it's voting on what the art design is going to look like, or the Department of Public Works actually likes to come out into community groups and do workshops to help develop maybe what that artwork is going to look like for the specific purposes that you're looking to increase safety in an artistic way. The next thing you're going to need to do is socialize the idea and collect that community support. So some ways that this can happen with Community Heights Neighborhood Organization, for example, they did a lot with posting to their community social media pages. They did surveys to collect that support from the community. The next thing you're going to need to do is work with me over at the Department of Public Works to prove means to install. This would be, are you going to have the volunteer power to be able to come out and actually paint the artwork? Or if it's a community group where, you're wanting to install a sculpture, we're going to want to see that you're working actively with an artist or somebody that has the means to do that. The way that this program was initially developed is that all of the financial burden for these projects fell within the community, putting the cart before the horse a little bit, because I'll talk about this more here in a minute, but that is not the case anymore. But I can talk more about that in a little bit. One of the things that you also will have to do is develop a traffic control plan. If you're doing artwork on a sidewalk, this isn't going to be nearly as complicated as if you're doing a big intersection project like seen here that was done by the Can Art Cinema. Definitely work with us at DPW to develop that. Essentially what that traffic control plan means is we've thought about a way that we can kind of shut down the area that we're doing the artwork in a safe way, because number one importance to us is that our residents and the volunteers that are out here putting this project in are safe while it's happening. So for example, with Can here on all three sides, this is kind of an interesting intersection because it's almost like a 3 to 4 way thing happening with a bunch of different roads converging, which is why they wanted to do the mural, was to call attention to the fact like you're approaching an intersection that's a little bit different than you might be used to. So DPW actually came out and we helped them shut down with barricades all areas where they were going to be working. Traffic was still able to get in and out of the neighborhood. And we felt that all of our volunteers were going to remain safe. And then finally, we do like to see some kind of a maintenance and or a removal plan for the artwork. This can be as simple as We don't plan this to be a permanent fixture within the community, so we're going to use temporary paint. This is going to wash away after a period of time through rain and snowfall. If you do want to maintain it and keep it permanent, we just need to know, are you going to come out on an annual basis to touch up the paint? And if it is vandalized or it gets covered with graffiti, we want to know that there is going to be kind of a plan to help us keep it looking fresh and beautiful. And then just kind of walk through what this approval process looks like. As mentioned by Lisa and Julia, sometimes these processes can feel pretty daunting. We have, over the past 2 approaching 3 years already with this, we've been able to speed up this process quite a bit. But the first thing that's going to happen is that there is going to be an initial meeting between myself and the community group that's interested in doing it. We can brainstorm ideas for what you're thinking about doing, come up with ways to do that community engagement and outreach, how we're going to go about doing that. Then the community group will actually draft an initial application that's going to be submitted to us at DPW for review. All of the requirements for that kind of backing documentation can be found within the policy, which is on the indy.gov website. If you just search community powered infrastructure, you'll be taken right to the page that has those policies, or I can also email them out to anybody that would be interested. It's basically, we just need to know the who, what, where, when, why, and how. From there, there's an internal city review meeting that's going to take place with myself and my boss, the Deputy Director of Policy and Planning, and our engineering and operations divisions. And that's really just to kind of look at what's the artwork that's going to be put in place. Does it include any kind of messaging? How can we best help this community in closing down the intersection for installation of the artwork? And then we will provide back to the community any edits or feedback that we might have to the application. At that time, you'll finalize your application and resubmit to us. And then I'll actually do the work to collect any internal signatures that are needed for approval and submit that to BNS on your behalf for BNS to issue an art in the right of way permit, which is free of charge.
All right, thank you, Daniel. So you may be saying, this is awesome, but I have no money. Where am I going to get the money to do this? Daniel will talk a little bit about a cost sharing grant that could be available from the city. I'm going to talk in a minute about a partnership program, but both the Art in the Right of Way program and the Traffic Signal Box program started out as self-funded projects, which means communities had to raise their own money. We found that to be a barrier. So we are putting in place different measures to help you with some of that funding. I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about the first 2 in a second, but I want to talk about some of these other ways to raise some money. Patronicity is a crowd granting platform that the state of Indiana uses. It's a national platform, but the state of Indiana subscribes to it. And there's 2 things that you can do. The LQC stands for lighter, quicker, cheaper. And they have a very quick turnaround LQC challenge grant right now, where whatever you raise up to $5,000, Patronicity as an organization will match it. So you can get $10,000 for a project up to. The thing is, you have to raise that money in order for them to match it. They won't automatically give it to you. The Creating Places grant is similar, but for larger amounts and longer term projects. The state of Indiana will match whatever you raise if you're in this Creating Places grant. That is actually best used if you, if the traffic signal box is part of a larger placemaking initiative that you have. There are other crowdfunding platforms that you can use that will, you know, sometimes match it, or, you know, you can just gather it and just do a campaign. IOB is a good one that I like to use. There's also GoFundMe. I like IOB better because it is exactly for projects like this. Local businesses can often give you money, little bits, and it's not, this isn't a really hugely expensive kind of project. But local businesses will give money, and then you can do some really awesome creative fundraising events to raise some money. But I want to talk to you about this program that I have, which we're going to launch it in early October. This is a partnership. It's not a grant. I don't give you actual money. I have money in my budget. I have money from the city of Indianapolis through our Public Art for Neighborhoods program. And then I got a grant from my board, the Metropolitan Indianapolis Board of Realtors. And these are funds that are specifically to help neighborhoods who don't have any other sources of income, but who really want and really need these projects. So I'll work with you to develop the project as you want to see it, not as I want to see it, but as you want to see it. And then you still have to gather all your permitting requirements, your neighboring property owner signatures and all that, but I will pay the artist for you. You don't have to pay them. That is me. And typically that is the primary expense of one of these projects, is paying the artist. And in fact, almost all of it is paying the artist. There are very minimal non-artist related expenses. And then you guys, you know, as usual, sign the MOU with the city to maintain the artwork. But I also can give you some funding and some actual materials so that you can maintain this artwork. There is a product that I use all the time when I maintain our Arts Council murals. It's called Graffiti Safe Wipes. They will take off everything. They don't take off the paint, but they will take off marker, they take off spray paint, they take off sticker. It is a wonderful stuff. I will give you a box of those wipes. They are fantastic. Okay.
So we are super excited to talk to you guys about our new community-powered infrastructure cost share program. The first round of applications for this cost share program actually opened this summer and is now closed. But there's still good news. So what is this program? Essentially, it is a 50-50 cost share program between the city of Indianapolis and local communities for art in the right-of-way, tactical urbanism, and Indianapolis neighborhood infrastructure projects. The even better thing is that we also introduced this summer that people who apply for this cost share program have access to a wonderful lending library of materials to use for these projects, bringing the costs even lower. Like I said earlier, you know, when this first launched and all of the cost was on the community groups, that felt like a really huge burden for entry into this program. And we wanted to figure out a way to do this that would be as equitable as possible. So through this lending library, we are going to have a bunch of different materials that you can actually use free of cost from us. Everything from rollers to paintbrushes to buckets to safety vests for volunteers to a ton of other different materials. And then that will automatically subtract from the cost of the project as you apply for it. And then any remaining 50-50 cost share would be figured out from there. So we're hoping to be able to essentially see a bunch of these projects happen at, you know, $0 to very little dollars. And like I said, the current application window just closed. The next round for this application will be available starting the very end of November, very beginning of December. So just keep watching that webpage there, or reach out to me and I can get you on a list to make sure that you are notified as soon as that's available.
Man, just a little bit more information about some of these other funding programs. The LQC Challenge Grant, there's a link on the screen right there, patronicity.com/LQC-grant. This is happening like right now. These are for small projects less than $10,000. You raise between 1,000 and 5,000, Patronicity will match it. You have to have more than 10 unique donors, and you have to raise at least $1,000. This is the key. You can only do it between October 1st and December 7th of this year. Super fast. You don't have to complete the project by then, but that's when your campaign has to run. And then there is a webinar in 2 days. Go to that link above and you can register for that webinar and find out how you can get some of that money. Similarly, creating places, you can raise anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000. So it's best when it's part of a larger community transformation project. Raise the funds through Patronicity. IHCDA will match when you reach the goal. So you can actually, if you think you can raise $50,000, you could get a $100,000 project going, which is fantastic. And you can start and finish this anytime. The key is that the state only allows $1 million statewide each year. So get in there early before all that money is spent. Other resources that we have that you can use. So we have a public art directory. So if you're going, well, I want to see what else has been done, you just go to our directory, filter it by traffic signal boxes, and then you can see all of them. You can click on them. You can see where they are. You can see the artist's name who did them. It's fantastic. And then you can also use it to search murals if you're looking for artists. We also, we also have an artist directory on our site. And so this is a way that you can connect with local artists of all kinds. If you want to use one from your neighborhood, you can search our directory by zip code or by neighborhood name. So it's a fantastic way to find artists if that's important to you, that they come from your neighborhood, like Lisa said. Okay, so we've talked a lot. What questions do you guys have? Open it up, just unmute yourself, ask your questions, or put them in the chat, whichever you prefer. Anything. So I'm gonna pick on somebody because I know he's here, Andre Parnell. Because Andre has talked to me about wanting to do, he is an artist and he wants to do some boxes in his neighborhood. And I said, why don't you come to this webinar and then we will talk to you about, and then maybe this will get you to the next step. So Andre, do you have any questions?
You know, I appreciate you calling on me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we're good.
You know, I don't have many questions, but I do have one. This past year, I was met with a gunman while I was doing some beautification, and I was just curious what kind of contingency we can hold as far as security, just on a continual basis. Is there a watch group or someone we can call on? How about that?
I'm gonna let Captain Foley talk about that.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
I guess I'm a little confused, but you were doing art and someone held a gun to you. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, let me, I'll give you a little more context. I was doing the mural, and normally this was up on Raider Street. So this is near West Side. So it wasn't a great neighborhood, so to speak. But we were there to beautify and to change some minds. But I'm doing a mural, and we were parked halfway up on the sidewalk, as we normally do in that neighborhood, just to kind of have our activities out of the street. Well, I had a gentleman, while I was parked halfway up on the sidewalk, a gentleman walked to the side of my car while I was sitting there, and he kind of confronted me like, why are you parked here? He said I was having a great day until I saw someone parked on my sidewalk. So he said, you wait right here. And then I kind of looked in disbelief. looked out the window. He kind of cursed me a few more times. He walked across the street and said, "You stay right here." Well, as you know, that's code for get out of there. So that's what I did. I went up the street and I called the cops. So I called you guys and you were very responsive. But as soon as I hung up, I was met at the window with this gunman who had found me. And I'm sitting there with my hands up like, paintbrushes and ladders. And he just sat there and yelled at me for a few moments that seemed like, a whole lifetime as it goes. But then he kind of went on his way, and that moment changed my lifetime for my services over there on Raider Street. Every time I see a frown.
Let me try to answer your question.
Sure.
First of all,
Sure.
as far as that happened to you, nobody should be subjected to that,
Oh no.
whether it's on Raider Street or anywhere in the city.
Sure.
Certainly some tips. There's nothing that's going to absolutely prevent something like that from happening, but some things you can always do is make sure that we're in groups, doing things during the day, working with the neighbors. That way they know what's going on, and maybe they can participate, be participants in those programs. Certainly, if you've got a relationship or a partnership with the police, we can't be personal security, but if we know that some events are taking place, our officers try to at least drive by and be present. Those are some ideas. Again, there's nothing that's going to be an absolute magic solution to that.
Hey Shane,
yeah.
those are absolutely great suggestions. But let me tell you, us artists, sometimes we get a hero complex and we stand under bridges, we stand in bad neighborhoods, and a lot of times we get a false sense of courage about beautifying our neighborhood. So really to take a note from what you're saying is to make the neighborhood aware, and to maybe have someone stand out there with you in groups, or versus going it alone. I appreciate your comments there.
Absolutely, and thank you for what you do for the community.
One of the things I have found is, especially when I'm working on underpasses, first of all, I try to let everybody that's around that know, whether it's a leaflet or through the neighborhood association, that the work is going to be taking place so that people are aware. I always get, if someone's going to go up on the sidewalk, I get a sidewalk closing permit. Daniel knows that I always follow the rules on my projects. And so, just so that we know that everything is, kind of above board. So if someone says, "Hey, are you supposed to do that?" You can say, "Yes, I have a permit to do this." What I have encountered, and I'm sorry to say this, that if artists are working in neighborhoods where they are unfamiliar, and I have to say it is racially motivated. If I have a Black artist working in a largely white neighborhood, I take special precautions to let everybody know. If there is a permit or a permission, I make sure that the artists are equipped with that so that they can say, I am supposed to be here. And I make them wear a high visibility vest, and then eye protection, sometimes head protection, because if someone is wearing that kind of clothing, they look official and you rarely get questioned. I always tell the artists that are working on traffic signal boxes, because you're working right next to the street, always wear the protective equipment. But it's also somewhat protective for not just physical safety, but emotional safety. And it helps people understand that you are supposed to be there. Even though it's stuff you can just buy at Lowe's, anyone can do that. I think anyone who's trying to pull a con job knows that you can buy that stuff. But most people will understand that you are doing official work. And if at that point, if you feel that based on how the project kind of shook out, if you don't feel that everybody in the neighborhood welcomes that, which is why it should be a neighborhood process anyway, so that everybody is aware. But if you feel very uncomfortable and go, you know what, I really don't think that everyone in the neighborhood had their say, and that people are not really accepting of this, Any community should feel free to talk to me, and then we can try and discuss the situation and figure out, based on the specific threat that you feel is there, we can mitigate it. Sorry, sometimes it's an individual, and it's often another artist who felt that they should have gotten the job that will harass the artist that actually did. And we can usually diffuse that. Sorry.
As Julie is recovering from her coughing spell, are there any other questions?
Hi,
Laura,
my name
go
is
ahead.
Laura Cooney.
Yes.
I am working on opening a cafe at 62nd Allisonville Road, and it's a location where the Nickel Plate Trail is crossing 62nd Street. And I would really love to, I reached out, and I think she's on here, the city, to find out if there was going to be sort of a sitting area at that crossing. But I would love to work with the Eastwood Neighborhood Association or Bragg or the Greater Allisonville neighborhood group to see if we could do, and also the landlord of the building, but possibly doing a mural and or a sculpture right there. So I guess I'm just really looking for some guidance as to, you've given a lot of information this evening. But yeah, so I'm just going to be a tenant of the building. And so from what I've learned tonight, I'll need to start with the landlord. But yeah, I'm just really looking to have some collaboration, with the city, or, I want to make sure that all the permissions are there, of just getting some kind of artwork and or sculpture and possibly even landscaping for this area.
Yeah, I can kind of jump in on that one a little bit, Laura, and say that
Okay.
I am going to drop two different email addresses here into the chat for you.
Okay.
So the first one is our general inbox for community powered infrastructure stuff. It's reimagineROW@indy.gov. That is actually manned by a handful of different people, so we can kind of get you connected to a bunch of different people at the city if you need. But I would be a good person probably to start with, as I oversee this program. So I would also be fine with and happy for you to email me at my personal work email, which is the Daniel.Stephenson@indy.gov. And what we can do is we can find time to meet with myself. And you said this was right by the Nickel Plate Trail. So we can also, I can bring in our trail person who oversees all of our trail projects. And we can kind of get you connected with a bunch of the right people to get this moving forward.
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other specific neighborhoods of things? I will tell you that the first step that we go through with traffic signal boxes is I run your locations by DPW to make sure that there isn't other street work that is going to make that box disappear. I have actually run into situations where they go, well, that's great, but in 3 months, we're completely redoing that road, and that traffic, we're burying the signals, and that traffic signal box is going away. It's like, great, awesome. So this is why I run everything through DPW, because they have that knowledge where I personally don't. And I have a neighborhood that I'm working with stuff where they are doing an intersection rebuild. And so they asked the community to just put that traffic signal box on hold until all of that street reconstruction was done. And then they have a brand new shiny box there.
Hey, Julie, it's Jordan from the BRV.
Hey, Jordan.
One, and this is for these probably both for Daniel, actually. Daniel, Lisa kind of alluded to this, but one of the biggest challenges we have is when we're getting those approvals from the neighboring property owners. Is there a better resource that you could suggest for identifying the property owners? Right now, we'll go on Map Indy and we can try to pull up their name, but obviously on the property card, it doesn't typically have contact information on it. So what's the best practice in your opinion for us as a neighborhood to go about getting that?
Yeah, so it sounds like you've already started with the very first place I was going to suggest to look, which is Map Indy. Is a great way to find out who that property owner is. Another resource I would say is if you email either of those email addresses that I just put in, I am happy to kind of do some of that digging for you. Another way to kind of get some of that information sometimes is through the recorder's office. You can actually pull up those agreements and get some of that information. I have access to the recorder's files directly to my computer. So honestly, if you just email me, I can usually point you in the right direction where that's concerned.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. And then the second question I have is regarding a particular space, and if it's classified as public right of way. When you talked about at an intersection, I'm going to assume the corner of an intersection, not within the intersection, but the corner of an intersection would be considered the public right of way.
I would say,
unless it's a private property, obviously, but if it's public property, it's row.
Yeah, so I would say almost with 100% certainty it is. Typically for right-of-way, like the best way to think about this at an intersection or along a roadway is that usually the city owns the right-of-way to approximately a foot back of sidewalk. This can be a little bit different, like when you're in like the super downtown area, but where the sidewalks usually go right up to the building. But yeah, typically a foot back of sidewalk. So at an intersection, I would say almost 100% of the time we're going to own it. And then the best kind of way to double check that would be in Map Indy. To turn on the right-of-way lines. While they're not 100% accurate, they will give you a pretty good idea of where that right-of-way line falls, if you're ever curious about that.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, one other thing that I would caution to anybody that wants to put a sculpture on a street corner like that, you have to be careful of the clear sight triangle, because there are ways, and there's the diagram on how to calculate that, but you can't block people's view as they're making that corner. And some corners, even though there's a big right of way, the entire thing, you can't put anything on it because it's all part of the clear sight triangle. So again, that's like, this isn't that's not 101 level knowledge, that's like 201, but I'd be happy if you want to put a sculpture on a street corner, either Daniel or I would be very happy to walk you through that process and determine if you can actually do that.
Yeah, I can actually say from, and I hate even mentioning this to any group of people, but in a previous life, I've been with the city now for almost 8 years. I actually did a lot of work with wireless companies for the small cell towers that got installed. So I am very, very familiar with calculating that line of sight triangle. A really like generalized thing that I could tell you is like go about 30 feet back from the intersection on a sidewalk usually will get you out of that. But like Julia said, either one of us would be happy to help you figure that out.
Any other questions? Wow, this is great. Thank you for joining us. I hope this was informative. I hope you've learned something. You can contact, Daniel gave his in the chat. He didn't put it on the slide. I'm sorry, Daniel, I didn't flag that for you, but you needed to put that on the slide. But that's okay. He gave it in the chat, but you can contact any one of us to follow up. I will be happy to send you the program guidelines, and then share this out to your friends, your neighbors, other neighborhood associations. My guidelines are going to be available. I think I have them scheduled for the 2nd of October. And then you'll see all kinds of socials. Just check the Arts Council social media platforms, and it will have the link. I'll put the link to our application platform in the chat so that you'll have it. But all of our applications for everything, all of our artist calls, all of our grants, they're all in the same place. And I'm going to type it in right now. So it's indyarts.grantplatform.com. That's where you can find anything, and this is where you'll be able to find the application for the Traffic Signal Box Partnership Program on or after October 2nd. There is a limited pool of funds, but we're just going to be designating partnerships until we run out of money. That's one of the great things about having this kind of funding, is like it's available for everyone. Other questions?
I would love to do one last shout out on behalf of DPW. If you would be interested in learning more about tactical urbanism or the Indianapolis Neighborhood Infrastructure Partnership, we will be doing an event specifically talking about community powered infrastructure as a whole on September 22nd at Cafe.
Awesome.
As a plug for your tactical urbanism, we really support that, because oftentimes people say, well, what are the police doing to make the streets safer? And we can't be everywhere. And that's a tool that the community can really drive, can be community driven to make the public right of way safer. So we are a big proponent of that.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Captain Foley.
And I am too. It is a fantastic way to just say what happens. And right by the Arts Council, we had a tactical urbanism project that helped to figure out that weird intersection where Fort Wayne comes in and College and East, and it's a big nightmare thing. And there was a project that, was there for probably about 6 to 8 months that helped everyone figure out the traffic counts, and it was great. It was a really great project. It wasn't artistic particularly, but it did help pioneer, and I think it is leading to some kind of change on that corner. So, all right. Well, thank you, Aboni. Thank you, everybody. And this is being recorded, so we will post the recording next to, it will be linked through my application for the partnership program. It'll be where we have the traffic signal box. It will be wherever you need to look for it. This will be there. And then anyone who signed up for this but couldn't attend, I'm going to send them a link to that as well. So thanks, everybody. We'll see ya.
Thank you.